Are you guys ready? Past 6. Okay. Good evening and welcome to our February 18th, 2025 Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District meeting. And first order of business, call this meeting to order and a pledge of allegiance. Please rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Next order of business is public comment. If there's anybody in the public here who wishes to speak before the board on an item that's not on our agenda, please come forward. I am not seeing anybody coming forward, so we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. I don't believe there's any changes from staff. No changes? Any changes from the board? I don't think so.
Was the 4.9, was that the additional one that came out later that you sent later? Was that already on the agenda? I don't think that was on the agenda, was it? Yeah, I think we need.
Thank you, Manager Burnett. Yes, staff recommends
Eli.
adding item 4.9,
Yeah.
which is the approval of
Right.
the PLOC contract.
Authorization to award contract.
Yeah, so that's been added, okay.
That's just a little item. Okay.
Motion to approve as amended?
Okay, motion to approve as amended? Second. Okay, motion by Manager Burnett, second by Manager Tofinelli. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, so we're going to go right to old and new business. We got a lot on the agenda here, and we're going to start with programs and projects from staff.
All right, starting off the projects and programs. The district is still housed in Prior Lake Fire Station number 2. We are closed to the public, but available by appointment. We're planning to move in to City Hall within the first week of March, and we should be available during the second week.
All right, I just wanted to jump into the 2024 outreach in review. This is just a photo collection of a bunch of events we had in 2024. I think in last year's presentation we had maybe 4 pictures, so we had a lot more events in 2024. We accomplished all of our events that we planned that were priority 1 and 2. So in 2024, we prioritized 1 through 3, our events, priority 1 being the most important to us. So we accomplished all of the priority 1 and 2 events. And then in terms of our communications, we accomplished 14 out of 15 of our priority 1 communications. We had over 1,700 people attend our events and our partners' events and our presentations, and then thousands more were also reached through our newsletters, our social media, our website pages, and other passive outreach. In 2025, we are planning some new outreach. We're also planning to do a lot of the outreach that was planned or that was conducted in 2024. And that can be seen in our outreach plan that is later on the agenda. New in 2025, we are planning to have Watershed Week again and including a mix of old events that we had last year and new events. These still need to be planned, but it should be a good mix, some new partnerships. We're also planning to have an additional event day. We're also planning an additional CAC and resident tour. We will be having our CAC and board joint tour as well as we have in years past. It's been really well received by our Citizen Advisory Committee members, and we'd like to expand that to more people to get to see the things that we're doing firsthand. We're also planning a high school level education event. Our partners at Soil and Water Conservation District, work with a lot of the lower grade levels, 5th through 8th. And we've had some teachers reach out to us in past years at the high school level, so we would like to meet them and have some educational events for their students, or a educational event for their students. We're also planning a carp management open house. We've had a lot of success in our carp management program in 2024 by meeting our goals on Upper Prior Lake, so we'd like to celebrate this. And we're also planning to celebrate a lot of our district progresses that we've completed in 2024 and expect in 2025. So these will accomplish these 3 goals of building partnerships and reaching new audiences, increasing awareness of our water resources, and celebrating our successes, which will in turn spread awareness of what we do at the Watershed District. So those are the events, the new events planned for 2025. We also have some new communication items planned for 2025, including a video on the Buck Stream restoration, updating our one-pagers. A lot of these are outdated with our old logo and just need kind of a refresh, so we're planning to update those, and then tabling and front office displays that will include our one-pagers. Also like to just create some displays that are interesting and interactive when we're tabling. The image on the left side shows tabling from 2018. Our displays look pretty similar to that, pretty simple. We would like to make it more exciting for people. A lot of these tabling events see a lot of faces, so it's easy to pass us by, so we'd like to create something that's eye-catching and interactive. And then we'd like to have a sticker collaboration with schools or local artists. Last year we had simple stickers that we passed out with just our logo, and we'd like to create something a little more meaningful that people want to take with them, and also have some collaboration opportunities there. And so the goals of those are to create high quality and timeless outreach materials. We're also going to continue with our volunteer programs and community programs in 2025, including our ICE reporters, our community assisted monitoring program, our carp espionage program, and our citizen advisory committee. And I have a photo there from our tour with our CAC and our board last year in 2024. And then our community programs of our farmer-led council and our cost share program will also, of course, continue in 2025.
So with the successes of the 2024 carp management plan, we are shifting focus, and that'll primarily be into active management in Spring Lake. So Spring Lake will be the focus, and it starts right now with tracking and removing carp. We're actively tracking 10 radio tags in Spring Lake. We do this 1 to 2 times a week. So the aggregate, or the red dots are each individual radio tagged carp. And this started, I think, the day after last month's board meeting in January. They've been very active. So a few days later, we tracked them into the central area of the lake. A few days later, they're jumping more to that north, that west central. They grouped up right in the middle of the lake. That's not where we want them. So this is an extremely challenging location to try and remove carp. Again, they're aggregated. This is a pretty good aggregation right here. This is what we would want if they were in the right spot to seine. And again, these are really close together. We're talking thousands and thousands of carp in a very small location, but they're in the wrong spot. So we have tools and technology to try and coerce these carp out of these locations. It's just proving challenging, so we're going to keep going after them. We want this seine haul. We want to remove carp in Spring Lake. That's our big objective for 2025. So right now, in the winter, commercial netting is our preferred method to remove carp. So we've got 6 factors to consider when considering a seine event, and these all have to align for us to have a successful seine. The first one is location. That's not good. They're in the wrong spot. Weather. It's too cold right now. So these two are preventing us from having a seine. Generally, the weather's got to be over 10 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's for consideration of native fish. Because during these events, native fish do get captured, and we do return them back into the water. And for their health, we have to do it at a reasonable temperature. The snow depth and the ice thickness is very good. The carp are aggregating. This is a good sign because we are hopeful that they will stay aggregated and move into a spot that we feel good about removing them in. We have checked for obstructions within these locations that we want to remove them in, and the commercial netters are excited. They've been out there, they've looked at them. We are, just a phone call away from working with the netters this year. So we've got a few.
Is the DNR a factor too?
Yes, it'll always be a factor. So we do need to provide a 48-hour notice, and that's for all of our activities year round.
Yeah.
So, yep. So we're going to keep staying persistent with this, with the carp removal situation on Spring Lake. Hopefully we'll have really good news to share at next month's board meeting. Jumping into a monitoring minute, I'll dive a little bit into what our data analysis is showing us. We're utilizing the whiskey database to help just bring forward information. This discussion will talk about nutrient loading and its considerations. I'll be discussing 2 locations. In red is Spring West. It's a smaller tributary, mostly agricultural. On the east side here, we got the Buck Channel in blue, predominantly natural. The drainage areas are pretty significantly different, but we'll see, we'll discuss how concentrations can play a factor here. So as you recall, red on the west, the site name that we call it is ST19, and in blue, we have ST14. Those 2 stars are where we collect water quality samples. Now in this graph below, in red, we have 19, and the concentrations, which is the mass of the nutrient over the volume, and then we can create a discharge, which is volume over time, and then we can get a load. And the load is just basically how much nutrients pass through this location. How many pounds of phosphorus does this site receive? How much, or phosphorus passes through this location? So that's how we can add up all these calculations. So each one of these dots represent a lab analysis of a particular time, and this is since 2020. In red, we have ST19 on the west, and what we're seeing here is just overall higher concentrations. So more nutrients per sample than in blue. Now, we also look at how much water passes through each one of these sites. So in red, we have 19 on the west side of Spring Lake. So overall, it's more of a steady site. We've got steady lower flows. In blue, we have conditions that allow for a lot higher flows. Now, it's a little, this is a challenging display of data because these middle years represented really drought-like conditions. So if I focus you all over here on the right, the site ST14 receives much higher discharge values of water. So a lot of water passes through. So that site has lower concentrations, but a lot more water. So on the west side of Spring Lake on 19, a lot less water, but higher concentrations. So what does this mean? Well, it can mean kind of similar situations. So 19 has higher pollutant load, 14 has higher volume of water. If we look over here in 2021, this is the concentration, this is the loading, so the concentration and the volume, all added up over the course of the year. And this is, a lot higher concentrations, you're going to get a higher loading. And over here in 2024, we had much more water than in 2021. So Site 14 had much more loading due to higher water volumes going through that site. So this is information that we've been teasing out in our database. We're still working on comparing and contrasting different sites, but we can help use this data to guide decision making on which sites might require different BMPs, which sites we want to focus our efforts on. So we've got more tools to unlock. We're looking at using scripting, which is just a more complex calculation to compare and contrast these sites. And that'll be our next steps through winter in the data analysis phase. So, any questions on the data dive here?
I just have one quick comment. I think that's perfect. What monitoring is supposed to do is to guide us to look at, okay, here's an issue, how do we handle it? So that's perfect. I love that. Frank?
You had the 6 variables for the carp. You go back there. The 7th variable is the DNR. And that's 48 hours. Now, what do they do with that 48 hours? Do they see you at the site then?
Yeah,
Is there any kind of follow-up?
that time allows them to the time, the 48 hours, allows the DNR to coordinate for their staff to then meet and oversee, watch that what we're doing is meeting our permit.
Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Is it helpful?
The time?
Yeah. I'm sure that 48 hours is not helpful.
No, it's
They
not.
actually come out and utilize the time to provide some useful oversight.
They do meet with us regularly out there, but the time can be disruptive toward our activities.
I'm the government, I'm here to help.
Come on now. Thank you very much.
Of course.
Okay.
Why?
Any other questions from the board members? Christian?
Yes, for the Spring Lake West, I think you also were collecting some data, a little bit more detailed data on different outlets after the repair of an outlet and so on. That's not included in these data, is that correct?
That Manager Morkberg, that is correct. That study will be conducted this year.
Okay.
Okay, into the ongoing projects, I'll step in for Emily this month and talk about the ferrochloride system. So the building improvements are underway. As you can see in this picture, the tank has been removed. So Right now, work on the garage door design is being finalized. So plans were needed to be adjusted due to there were unknowns what the structural integrity of the building looked like. So underneath the metal sheeting here, it was unknown what the support columns looked like. So after there was more of an invasive look, there needed to be some changes within the design. Included in the changes, so that containment wall will need to be dropped down to the base of the floor. We had initially wanted a small curb in there for more of a tertiary containment, but since the double-walled tank will still be good to go with our safety requirements. So overall, there's just a small delay due to these garage door designs, but the contractor's working and is ready to move forward. So for the drive improvements, the contractor has been chosen. The lowest quote was received by Finch Excavating, LLC, and right now I believe contracting is underway. Work is scheduled to begin in April, and that'll include removing trees along the drive and any additional work. And then for the driveway, the substantial completion date is at the end of May 31st. And the driveway contractor will need to work with the building contractor to avoid any overlap, and EOR will be managing that. So, yes, Christian.
Yes, will the building be ready to start dispensing iron chloride at the hope time in the spring?
Yeah, the iron chloride, typically we would start that the end of March, early April, and that is still the scheduled plan.
So good luck.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions for staff? If not, good job. Okay, we're moving on then. We'll go to Scott, SWCD 2024 Summary of Accomplishments. And we'll turn it over to Troy Kupel, the administrator for SWCD. Welcome, Troy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, managers. It's good to be in front of you again. And I just want to start by saying on behalf of Jim and the entire board, we really do appreciate our partnership. One of our main missions at the Soil and Water is to help not only landowners, but all our partners to do what they can do to help protect our water and other soil resources. And the partnership is also beneficial to us, so it's mutually beneficial, and we appreciate it for those reasons. I'm going to go through just a high-level overview. You have quite an extensive report if you want to dive into the details in your packets. So I'll just hit some of the highlights and then just stand by for any questions and try to answer those as you desire. So we provide services in 6 different areas: cost share program, Farm-Led Council, monitoring, permitting and easements, education, and then other. Although I don't know that you can necessarily group all the other ones in the same category, but it's sort of a catch-all for a number of individual type projects. Starting with the cost share program, so engagement's a big piece of this. The chart you see there just tracks the number of what we call service requests. These are calls from your landowners to the Soil and Water District to receive information or support or assistance with projects, and maybe it just is information and what they can do locally on their own to help improve water resources or other natural resource concerns. but it also could be to install specific projects of interest. So in 2024, you'll see we had about 55 new service requests within the district. I would say that's about average for the past 4 or 5 years. And what you see on the right side of the slide, there's just kind of a symbol of the progression. So you start with a number of service requests, and then you work with landowners. You hopefully develop projects and get them installed. So from the 55, you can see we eventually get 26 on the ground. So that's different every year, and if there's one theme I would say throughout my presentation is that things are just very variable from year to year. It depends on things like weather, economy, education outreach, grant funding, and just available time. But we do see this. This is probably a relatively good percentage if you compare the number of folks that walk into the office or seek assistance to the number of projects get in the ground. It's a little bit better than, 50%. So, all right, next slide. Here's just some examples of some of the projects that were installed. We had quite a few projects as indicated on the last slide. These are just pictures of 4 of them. On the upper left, you'll see the Amy Butani Shoreline Restoration Project. Below that is the Jeff Pearson Shoreline Stabilization Project. That was quite an extensive project. On the lower right is the Mark Kreuzer Grade Stabilization. And above that is Tom Vogel's Grade Stabilization. Both those two on the right side, there are actually projects that were constructed on County Ditch 13. The Pearson one is on the west side of Spring Lake, so the very, very west side. The cost share program BMPs, so we do track every year what projects go in, and I won't go into the details, but you can see from just 22, 23, 24, there are certain projects we do a lot of and some we do very few of, and in fact, in the past few years, 3 years or so, there's a number of types of practices that we haven't installed any. But if you look back over the past 10 years, we've done a substantial amount of each one of those. And each one, not all of them, I should say, the vast majority of work we do, we try to look at what is going to be the environmental impact. In other words, specifically the phosphorus benefit. And you can see we do track that for every project. I will put an asterisk on that. We use different model and tools to determine what that loading is. There's not always a one-to-one correlation between the numbers you see here and what the number is going to be in terms of a reduction in the lake or a stream. I would pay more attention to the trends and the direction and what sort of positive movement we're having with respect to the work we're doing with landowners on the land. The map there on the right shows the projects that we've installed since 2014. You can see they're all over the district. They're all different types. Some have water quality benefits. That's where we spend most of our time and energy on, but a lot don't. The rain gardens, the pollinator plantings have different objectives, but by volume or number, we do a lot more of those, and that's great for community engagement and just participation in watershed stewardship. But we do have this information available in GIS format if there's a desire to ever see kind of drill into certain areas what's being done. Next slide. Cost share program environmental benefits. As I mentioned, we do track that for each project that comes in the door. Specifically, projects that are cost shared through the district and where we have actual agreements that include operation and maintenance for anywhere from 5 to 10 or more years. And again, this is highly variable from year to year, but what we want to focus is the trend, and you can see the increasing trend over the years in terms of both phosphorus, which is in green, and sediment, which is in the brownish color. So we're seeing positive increases in that over time. The cost share project contribution, so this graph kind of shows the distribution of funding sources from year to year, starting in 2018. So what we try to do at the Soil and Water District is leverage as much non-district funds as possible to get projects in the ground. For example, the projects that you saw on the previous slide with the photos, the only one that really received any Prior Lake, Spring Lake money was the Butani one. And I don't even know how much it was. It wasn't a whole lot, but we were able to garner grants and use grants to fund the Pearson project and the Kreiser project, as well as the Vogel project. So how that translates is kind of shown in the pie chart there. 55% of all the funds that we apply towards project is actually provided through the Soil and Water District grants. About 21% is from the landowners, and leaving about a quarter of the cost that the district provides through the cost share funds provided in the budget. Farmer-led council practice installation. What we want to see there again is the trend towards increasing number of acres under where we see the application of soil health practices specifically. The dark green on the left bar chart there shows the cover crop acreage, and then on top of that is high residue management, and those two work in tandem components. There's an additional one that we would categorize as a soil health practice, and that is nutrient management. But calculating actual benefits from nutrient management is very difficult. So we track most easily, I guess, is the phosphorus and the sediment from these soil health practices. So in this particular graph, you'll see the acreages. So 558 acres total in cover crops this year, and almost 450 acres in high residue management. That's where farmers don't till all the residue from the previous year crops underground. They leave it on top to protect it from rainfall, wind erosion, and things like that. So you can see we've had, it's not a significant increase over last year, but it is the highest year when we look at the total acres that are being applied throughout the watershed. That was in 2024. And we added a few more acres onto our lake-friendly farm certification program. So currently we have 959 acres, or almost 17% of the watershed cropland is now certified under the lake-friendly farm program. The next two charts here show the environmental benefits associated with that. So we can see the benefit from the cover crops and the residue management there in terms of phosphorus and sediment reductions. The reason this is steadily increasing is because we have acres where the projects or the practice that our landowners and farmers signed up for are multi-year. So they're stacking on top. So we might have, let's say if we have 100 acres one year, but they're gonna do it, for the next 3 to 5 years, and then we have another landowner, the following year we have 100 acres, so now it's 200 acres, and that's just continuing to compound. So we call that cumulative reductions that are being achieved from year to year. Okay, next slide. So I'll move on to the permit and easement support. So right now, as you know, the Soil and Water District is providing help with the district to secure those easements, and then also to manage the inspections, complete the inspections, and seek resolution to any violations we find. In addition to that, provide support to the district for its permit program, and just coordinating between your engineer and staff and the city of Prior Lake and the developers to make sure that the district's rules are being met. Currently, there are 54 easements in place. Within those, there are 256 tax parcels. So that 256 is important because that's the number of sites we have to inspect over the course of every few years. This past year, we did 113 inspections, but we anticipate anywhere from 130 to 150 being more typical. Last year, we identified quite a few violations, which it wasn't abnormal. We just identified what was out there. There's currently 95 active violations, and 15 of them are what we would consider high priority, and those are shown on the map in your booklets. Next slide. This here graph just shows a distribution of the different types of violations we find. So the vast majority are more minor in nature. Those are missing or misplaced signs, mowing, and just brush and other debris that's maybe left or placed inside the easements. I would consider these minor because they're fairly easy to resolve and bring easement back into compliance simply by not doing something or removing something that's fairly simple. More difficult are the hard landscaping, the permanent structures and things like that. Those are what we're more or less referring to as the high priority. So we had that workshop a year or two ago and just started identifying what are the highest priority and started to try and knock those off. And those are the ones we're focused on most right now. Next slide shows some examples of what we consider some of the more high priority ones. Hard landscaping there on the left. Structures, I mean, we do see some decks, even corners of buildings within the easement. Driveways are not atypical. On the left side, or the right side there, you see a trail on the top. We have a number of easements where we have paved trails going through them, and then just some hard landscaping. So some of those, as you can imagine, are more difficult to remove, and those would be classic examples of where we do encroachment agreements or just easement amendments as opposed to just having them correct the violation. Next slide. Moving on to education outreach. So we had 4 workshops last year that we did in cooperation with the district. One was a soil health. We had a prescribed burn, stabilize your shoreline workshop, and how to build a rain garden. And then we have a host of other events. These would be including and perhaps not in addition to some of the events that Danielle was referring to earlier. Next slide. And this we're getting to some of the other one single type of projects. One was the Buck Stream stabilization. I don't have any photos there, but I'm sure Emily has kept the board abreast of the progress we made on that and through its completion now. And then it's nice to hear that Danielle will be putting a video together on that project. That should be pretty interesting. But we provided project coordination and some construction oversight for that, as well as provided a significant amount of cost sharing to complete that project. The Buck Lake outlet, that was more of a study that we contributed some effort towards, mainly focused on determining different elevations, doing a survey within the channel, determining culvert invert elevations, and also what we call low floor elevations, or kind of where structures are the lowest point of like a house or a shed or a driveway that might be impacted by higher water levels. We wrapped that all up in a report and submitted that to the district later last year. Just the 2 photos on top show just how that lake has changed over the years. So the one on the left on top, the black and white, clearly shows the channel back in 1937. That channel extends all the way down along the west side of Buck Lake, and surprisingly never became a county ditch, despite all that work. What was really difficult to discern, and we ultimately couldn't, was whether that, how much of that ditch was actually a natural channel or how much of it was excavated. It appears from this that, there's clearly an excavation that had occurred, but it's hard to tell how landlocked, if you will, Buck Lake was originally before this. So there's very few photos, if any, dating back prior to 1937. We might have some 1924s or 29s in the office, but there's kind of hit or miss. But anyway, in 2022, you can see that the lake has really reached its full extent that we largely see today. The bottom one is the Sutton Lake drone survey. So we do that once a year. We create a digital orthomosaic photo, and then we'll also take some still photos and videos of it, as you can see there in the pictures. And just rounding out with a summary of our budget and expenses. So we have all these different categories, and the darker bars show what was budgeted, and the lighter bars show what we actually invoiced throughout the year. So we appreciate the flexibility on the district to allow us to kind of shift funds around to put where the work is and where we're needing it to meet the demands. Overall, though, we came in a little bit under budget last year, so we're happy to report on that. So with that, Mr. President, I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, very good report, Troy. Any questions? I just had one quick question on that photo, 1937. I bet that was a very big drought. I mean, the dirty 30s, that was probably one of the lowest points of Buck Lake, I bet.
Yeah, could be, yep.
Yeah.
I will just mention, if I might, there was a question at the workshop about funding for soil health. And I put a note down, and I just wanted to report that we are looking at some federal funding, and we're actually considering it this month. The state of Minnesota has a strong push for soil health practices statewide, both for water quality, but maybe even more so for climate resiliency. We've already received some funding from the state to support soil health programming countywide, and that includes within the district. This next round of funding that they're providing is to actually provide more funding for practices. So our intent is that if we were to request these funds, it would bring a significant amount of money to the tune of $180,000 to Scott County, which we could apply within Prior Lake, Spring Lake, and points throughout Scott County. So I think we're actually going to be in good shape to provide the level of support and funding to supplement the Farm-Led Council budget as well as the district's cost share program to meet all the needs that we have. So stay tuned, but I think the outlook is pretty good on that.
Okay, that's good.
Yep.
Good update. Manager Tofinelli.
Troy, thank you very much for the presentation. Always great to see the progress you're making. And I had one question on the tax program on the phosphorus. In 2024, you were estimating 192 pounds reduction. That's an annual number that you calculate?
Correct. It's annual.
I'm wondering if that's something we use in our calculation towards our goals for phosphorus reduction that we commit to. Is that a number that we incorporate, Jeff? Do you know?
Committing to reductions is not a metric that we currently use in our management plan.
Okay, thank you.
Troy, I just want to make a comment too, that I've been on the board now 6 years plus, but when I first got on the board, I was always wondering, why aren't we using the Soil Water Conservation District more? And I see over the years, we've been doing that, and I really appreciate that, especially in our inspections, permitting, and assistance and other programs that have led to better water quality. And you saw some of it in our workshop, some of the things that we're doing, the results are showing up. So appreciate your partnership all these years.
Likewise, thank you.
Manager Morkenberg.
Yes, I would just echo that we so much appreciate working with the Soil and Water Conservation District and to combine our efforts both with your knowledge and the projects, and as well as the financial resources where we can help each other out at different times. I'm glad to hear this new possibility for additional funding for the Farmer-Led Council, because I think we are lucky that there's a significant amount of farmers that are interested in these programs, which is a big gift. Yes. And so if they want to do it, it would be wonderful to be able to help fund it help them with the funding for it. So if those grants become available, that's very good. Am I correct that the farmers in our watershed district are remarkable, like have shown a lot of initiative and responsibility and taking on a lot of projects if you compare to the state as a whole, that they are actually impressive people, very impressive people?
Yes, Mr. President, Manager Morkenberg, I would say yes. I don't have data to support that, but anecdotally and just awareness of what's going on in other parts of the state is that if you look at the proportional number of acres you have in landowners, it's very high in terms of adoption of these practices compared to most other places throughout the state. An adventure country, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yep, and it's because of this focused effort.
So thank you for your efforts.
Well, thank you too, and I just want to mention quickly, put a plug into your staff. You got a great staff to work with, and all of us at the Soil and Water Office really enjoy working with them, and that goes a long way.
Any other comments? Okay.
Terrific, thank you.
Thank you.
And I do want to say one other thing. I think the key to the SWC and your staff is the relationships you have with the landowners, which helps us in doing some of our projects. They have that relationship component, so
That is key.
that's one of your better benefits that we get from you. So thank you.
You bet.
Great. All right. And with that, we're going to move on to our next report with watercraft inspections, 2024 season report with Ben. He's already at the podium. The floor is yours, Ben.
There we go. Great. So good evening, board. Thank you for allowing me to come present our work for you guys again this season. My name is Ben Brandt, the operations manager at Waterfront Restoration, and we facilitate your watercraft inspection program at the 4 launches throughout the watershed district. So in your packet, there is a 37-page report where I pull in all of our survey data and staffing and analysis of the work that we've provided for the watershed district this past summer, and then as well as the past 5 seasons collectively that we've been partners. In the interest of time, I'm going to cover the first 12 pages and the last 6 pages and kind of skip over the middle part of the report where it breaks down the individual lake accesses. So if Jeff, you can help me go to page 3 of my report.
Certainly, and if there is there a clicker up there anywhere?
I don't see one.
Okay. No problem. Yeah, I'll be ready when you cue me.
Great. Awesome. So on this page, it gives just a summary overview of the lake name there in Table 1, where we spent our inspection hours and the number of inspections conducted. So all in all, we were contracted for 935 hours of inspection time spent at the launches, and we fulfilled 100% of those hours. And the breakdown there is Fish Lake for 54 hours, Lower Prior Lake for 155 hours. Thank you. And Upper Prior Lake 448 hours, Spring Lake 277 hours for that total. And over those 935 hours, we did 3,300 watercraft inspections. So general outline of our program is we kick it off on fishing opener, which was May 10th, 11th, 12th this summer, and wrapped up on Labor Day. Most of it wrapped up on Labor Day, and we lingered for the weekends into early October on Spring Lake and Upper Prior. A couple of things that we dealt with this year, similar to the past seasons, we were balancing our staffing with the DNR staffing, so our programs complement each other. They were out there quite a bit, as well as we were, and my goal with my staffing is that I never have our inspectors at the same launch as the DNR inspectors at the same time. That way we can spread out and cover as much ground and as many boaters as possible. Second thing was there was some flooding earlier in the season where I think we saw some difference and some ebbs and flows in traffic patterns. And third thing was that the Lower Prior Lake launch went under construction and closed by the end of July through the rest of the season. So there was some front loading of schedules at Lower Prior, and then I'll show you in a little bit with some difference in the data trends where a lot of the boating traffic moved what we normally see at Lower to Upper Prior Lake and Spring Lake because of it. So let's see if this.
Sorry, is it not working?
It's not moving.
I'll take Q still.
Okay, thanks. Breakdown here in these two figures, top one is the type of watercraft that we are conducting inspections on. 44% of the time it was a fishing boat, and the second most common one was a runabout or speedboat, 24% of the time, and this is across all locations. The second pie chart on this page was our time out of water before entering. And what we really want to see here is as big of a percentage as possible in the green section, which represents 5 days or more since the last time the watercraft was in the water. And that is a recommendation based on the DNR's scientifically proven dry time that would allow for any AIS to die and not become a viable introduction to a new body of water. So 66% of the boaters that we inspected had been out of the water for that 5 days or more. And then the highest risk category is the ones that have been out of the water for less than 24 hours. So you see that represented in the red category at 12%, which accounted for about 261 inspections that had been on a body of water either that same day or the day prior. Another couple questions that we ask during the inspection process is, first we record the state's license plate of the towing vehicle, and by and large, most of our boaters are from Minnesota licensed vehicles. However, we did have 18 boaters from Wisconsin, and then 5 from Alabama, 4 from Iowa. Reason this is relevant is because different states have different AIS species known to be infested in them, as well as different laws that the residents or the people in those states abide by. So every time we see an out-of-state boater, our inspectors are trained to take a little extra time to educate them on Minnesota's AIS laws and the known infestations here in our state. And then the pie chart on the bottom of this page is the allocation of our staffing percentages. So we spent 48% of our hours on Spring Lake, and then Upper Prior Lake was 30%. And normally we'd see more on Lower Prior, but with the closure, we spent 16% of the hours on Lower Prior Lake this season. And we'd usually see more on Upper Prior as well, but once that closure happened, we had a lot of DNR scheduled shifts on Upper Prior Lake, so I was moving our inspectors to Spring Lake. These two bar graphs are basically a breakdown of our inspection hours by month. You can see that represented by the orange dot, and then the number of inspections that took place during that calendar month in the blue bar value. So pretty busy June and July, and things were kind of tapered off there in August, September, with our final couple days of inspections there in October. Cover these real quick, but inspections by weekday. So predominantly we try our best to keep all of our launches covered either by our staff or the DNR staff every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That gives the lake the best value from a protection standpoint when most people are boating on the lake. And then we mix in some random weekdays, including the holidays, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday there. So much lower percentages, but we did 44% of our inspections on Sundays this year. And then the bar graph on the bottom is just representative of the time of day that inspection took place. So every inspection survey that's entered into the application is time-stamped and reflected there. Go ahead, Jeff. These two bar graphs graphs represent the responses we received when the inspector asked the boater what was the last body of water visited and what is the next body of water you're planning to visit. We see a lot of traffic to and from Upper and Lower Prior Lake, and then some as well in that next body of water planning to visit. The highest percentage was Spring Lake. The color coding in these graphs is reflective of the known infestations in those bodies of water based on the Minnesota Infested Waters List. And you can kind of see where some of the risks might be present there with 20 people visiting Fish Lake next, 20 or 15 visiting Cedar Lake next, which are known to not have any infestations. All right, these two next few pages are a reflection of the findings, violations, and decontaminations that took place this summer. So we found 56 entering inspections where there was some form of violation on the watercraft, water-related equipment, or trailer. That was about 2% of all entering inspections, and 11 of those 56 were drain plug violations. So the watercraft arrived at the launch with the plug in. In these situations, our inspectors do everything they can to completely resolve the potential issue. Sometimes it's as easy as plucking a strand of or fragment of plant off of a wheel well. Other times it requires a referral to a decontamination site. So you can see in the pie chart the findings there. 64% of the time it was plants. That was 36 occurrences. And then the 20% represented in the purple was the drain plug violations. And then the red area was the zebra mussel findings. We had 6 entering watercraft arrive with zebra mussels on the watercraft. And that was a bigger increase than what we've seen in the past. And at least 2 of those launches were denied entrance to the body of water because of the findings. So the second pie chart here is a reflection of what we're finding on exiting. 94% of the time it is plants and are easily removable by hand. The one time we found zebra mussels was from Prior Lake, so not a new infestation. And in these instances of exiting violations, similar to the entrance, where it's not necessarily deemed, well, with the exiting ones, it's not necessarily deemed an AIS violation as long as the boater is cooperative with our inspectors and makes an effort to completely remove the issue. If they were to say, I don't care about these plants, there's zebra mussels on my boat, I'm leaving anyways without an inspection, that would then be a violation. But these exiting findings are more reflective of what we're doing in partnership with the boat owner rather than sending a citation to conservation officers. Same breakdown in these next 2 pages of entering violations by lake and exiting violations by lake. You can just see where we're finding the plants, where we're finding the zebra mussels as a further breakdown from the pie charts on the previous page. Go ahead. And then one thing we do additional on top of the DNR's inspection survey is we do an additional survey or form with our inspectors that tries to dig into what types of plants or what kind of findings we're actually finding there at the launch when we do find something. And this came as a request from the board a number of years ago to say, well, what's really at risk here? Are we finding just coontail and eelgrass and stuff that's not necessarily invasive, or are we finding and preventing invasive species from being transported? So what I do is with our inspectors ask them when they find plants to take the time to fill out this additional form and gather this information represented in the pie charts. So you can see a lot of it was on exiting, 10% entering, but from an identification standpoint, 45% of the time we were finding plants. We were field identifying it as curly-leaf pondweed, 10% of the time as Eurasian water milfoil, and those are the 2 main invasives. The rest would be natives. One thing to say about field identification of plants is it can be pretty difficult. Our inspectors aren't all trained biologists or plant scientists, so it is kind of a best guess from their standpoint, but they do go through general training, plant identification as part of their authorization. So the next slide shows an example of some of our findings. that are documented through this additional form that we have our inspectors for the watershed district go through. Top left is a Lower Prior Lake exiting inspection from May 19th, where suspected Eurasian water milfoil was found on the stern and prop of a fishing boat. Top right picture is a Yamaha jet boat that was exiting Upper Prior Lake with suspected curly leaf pondweed wrapped around its rudder and stern drive there. Bottom left is a exiting inspection from Lower Prior Lake on July 7th. Kind of found a lot of everything in this one. There's suspected Eurasian water milfoil and curly leaf pondweed mixed in with native northern milfoil, cara, and eelgrass removed from trailer bunks and the gimbal area of a runabout. And then the bottom right picture is from Spring Lake on August 3rd, where an exiting boat was found with large clumps of a mixture of native and invasive plants removed from the trailer bunks and wheel wells of that inspection process. So if you could skip ahead to page 30 for me. I'll go through these last few slides, and basically as a benefit of working together for 5 years, I've been able to take all of our data, all of our hours, and look at a 5-year trend analysis of what kind of the ebbs and flows of the seasons have brought. And 2019 is also represented on there from what the DNR database has. So I was able to pull that as well. So you can see there in this table that we had a down year in total volume of inspections. We actually had about a 9% decrease overall. And this chart here brings in what we did as contracted service providers for the watercraft inspection program, as well as what the DNR provided with their staff. So it takes both organizations collectively as a representative of what's happening in the watershed district. So go ahead. The top bar graph here is our contracted inspection coverage hours by lake. And then the two bar graphs in the bottom of this page are a representation of what we did as waterfront restoration contractor in blue at Lower Prior Lake and Upper Prior Lake, and then what the DNR did with their staff in orange. Good. Similar breakdown over the years of all locations, all providers, April through October. And then the same breakdown by week if you look really closely at those tiny thin lines. Go ahead. And then another comparison here over the 6 years of data that we've been able to collect of our violations and AIS findings. So you can see there in the top table of figure 48 that we did have a improvement in overall AIS lake entrance law violations. We were at 2.46% last year, dropped to 2.03% this year. And then similar with violation of the drain plug laws, 2% last year down to 0.59% this year. And then those findings and some of the differences there that we've had at entrance is in the table below, most notably the decrease in plants finding. And I think you'll see some of that based on year-to-year variation in vegetation growth on the lakes, as well as sometimes we'll have inspectors find a lot of plants on certain weekends if the wind's blowing into the launch and really covering up those trailer bunks as they're pulling out. So the second most notable one here is just the big decrease in plug violations. So 118 last year to 31 this year. Same representation of findings at exit. Not too much to report or call out here. Pretty consistent level of mud plants found. We did see more snails. As far as I'm aware, they were all considered native common snails and not an invasive species. And then the zebra mussels did tick up there from 39 findings last year to 61 this year. And I will go into hopefully the resolution of that extra zebra mussel finding in this next table, where I was able to pull what the DNR staff did for decontaminations. It's definitely one of the perks of having the cooperation and partnership with them is that they will bring that trailer decontamination unit to the launch with them and staff it with two of their inspectors. So in those situations, if I know that and I communicate this to our inspectors, if their staff is at Lower Prior Lake and we're at Spring Lake and we have a situation where a decontamination is either legally required or recommended, we can refer that boater directly to Lower Prior Lake. And usually when we can give that boater a specific location and confidence that it's staffed, they're much more likely to actually go there and complete the decontamination process. So you can see here that the DNR completed 79 decontaminations on Upper Prior Lake this year after completing 0 last year. And partly due to the mid-season closure, did 9 decontaminations on Lower Prior Lake this season compared to 32 last year. So it was almost like 175% increase in their decontaminations this year. So kudos to them and their staff, but also the strong partnership where we can send people to them if it warrants it. This page, or this graph here, is a representation of the decontaminations that the DNR completed. 96% of them were on exiting inspections, 3% entering, and 1 courtesy. A courtesy decontamination is just when someone arrives for decontamination, but they're not actually launching into that body of water. Sometimes they do it just to be extra careful. Other times we've had some people do this as a requirement to enter into a fishing tournament or other. It's basically a free service, and it's promoted by the DNR. So yeah. Go ahead to the last page here, Jeff. Thank you. Yeah, so just to recap and summarize here, in total, we conducted 3.5 inspections per hour of staffing at all of the launches our team covered. Overall, we saw a 9% decrease in total inspections across the watershed district compared to 2023. We had the 6 entering zebra mussel violations that were documented and reported to the Minnesota DNR for follow-up and enforcement. And I think overall, and additionally, the AIS law compliance and drain plug compliance improved. And then our inspector's primary role and responsibility is AIS and looking for it and educating the public for it, but there are times where inspectors are asked and provide public service to people, whether it's directions as far as how to navigate a lake, how to navigate a launch carefully. I know at Spring Lake we were giving out postcards, double-sided pictured maps of Spring Lake that I'm sure the board had a say in, and it's pictured in the Spring Lake section of this report. And then lastly, I would say that we represented the watershed district and our company in a professional and polite manner to the public. I didn't personally receive any complaints. I got a few compliments on our staff, so I hope you guys feel the same way. Looking ahead at next season, I think what we have established is working really well, and if there's any room in the funding to increase hours, we would certainly say we could do that on weekdays, especially at the Prior Lake launches. But overall, I think the partnership with us and the DNR works well and provides best value for the coverage of the 4 main launches we staff. So happy to answer any questions, but also say thank you for your partnership over these 5 seasons.
Okay, thank you for that report. Very complete. A lot of information. Any questions from the board on anything? Manager Boyle.
I presume the small number of pontoons represented are because they're, for the most part, permanently moored at private. Is that kind of what?
That's what I found.
Seems like it's all pontoons out there.
Yeah, we definitely see less traffic in and out of pontoons just because they're more of a residential watercraft, and we see them launch a lot in May, and then they pull off the lake in September and go right to storage usually.
Well, thank you.
Do you see probably an increase in education with the boaters? I mean, it seems like we've been doing this process for a number of years. Most boaters are aware of AIS and the requirements, or Or is it just somebody's a new boater and doesn't realize it?
It's a great question, and there's a lot of dynamics to that. I would say having the consistency of our presence here over the last 5 years certainly helps. And people will come to expect an inspection whenever they're boating on Spring Lake or Prior Lake, lower or upper. We've done other locations where we're there for the first year, and there's a lot of surprised boaters and somewhat rude boaters, and maybe a bigger opportunity for education. But usually, as we've established multiple years of a presence and consistency with the boaters, they know the game, they know the drill, they know what to expect, and there's oftentimes a big increase in just self-compliance without having to have the intervention of an inspector. I would say that the dynamics are a little interesting at times where you still will probably have that 2 or 3% of the people, maybe 5% of the people just say, doesn't matter, I don't care for some reason, and are going to be ignorant of the rules and the risk regardless. And so a lot of times, in my personal opinion, the best way to deal with those is probably through an enforcement situation, is if they're not abiding by the state statutes to begin with.
Follow-up question, what does the DNR do for follow-up enforcement? When you report, I think you reported zebra mussel.
Yep.
What do they actually do?
Yeah, sometimes it's I don't always see the results of the enforcement, but I know from a couple of these cases that a conservation officer will either call the registered boat owner, or they'll go knock on their door and follow up with either a verbal warning, or if it's egregious enough and there's the right documentation, they will issue a citation and a fine for breaking the law. That's probably the most common, is it's like a reactive follow-up. Ideally, if we can get the violation reported and a conservation officer on site, they can deal with it right there in the moment at the launch or out on the lake. But those are pretty rare. The COs or the conservation officers are spread pretty thin throughout the summer. So much more common where that is just handled administratively after the fact.
I assume if there's multiple violations, if you do it again and again, there's obviously going to be increase.
Yep.
Enforcement. Any other questions from the board? Manager Morkenberg.
Yes, you showed on your graphs there that probably it's more concerning when you have a watercraft that comes the same day or the day before from another lake. And one of those situations that can be challenging is if you're working with wake boats where they have storage tanks. And so I just wanted to hear is when you inspect those, do you feel that you can account for the storage tanks in them and that they have been emptied and so on, or it must be difficult to do?
Yeah, and those boats can be intimidating for inspectors as well at times, especially when you get into the mechanics and the complicated computer systems of them. But it's one of those moments where our inspectors need to explain the process to the boat owner and say, hey, like this might take a few extra minutes, but I need you to get in your boat, and either if they have the soft ballast tanks, lift up the bags and show me that they're dry and empty, or if they have the hard ballast tanks, run the bilge, and if no water spits out, or if you can listen to the valves and just the air running through it, usually in those situations we'll have to allow them to launch. But if there is water that spits out or any standing water in there, we can help remove it either with a sponge if it's a hard or soft ballast tank, or we just say, in this situation we're going to have you go to a decontamination site, and they don't have to go to one that we tell them to. The boat owner is totally free to go wherever they want. They could go home and do it. They could go to a marina and do it, or like a DNR site. But in those situations, we would deny the launch if we can't confirm that it is dry at that point. And to elaborate a little bit on your question, with those higher risk, less than 24 hours out of water launches, there's different risk associated with different types of watercraft. So if you're launching a kayak or a paddleboard, the same day or next day. Typically a low-risk watercraft because there's not a lot of places on a paddleboard or kayak where invasive species or plants, water would be stored or caught and transported. But you get into fishing boats, you get into wake sport boats with ballast tanks, you get into docks, lifts, that kind of stuff where there's a lot of different live wells, bait wells, ballast tanks, cracks, crevices where those plants can get caught and captured. That becomes a much higher risk from a dry time standpoint.
Okay, this is just for discussion on the report. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Good job. Thanks. Okay, we're going to move on to a 2025 education outreach plan. We're going to vote on this, I think. So, Danelle, you're going to take this?
Yes, I did present at the beginning of the projects and programs, but we can open those up to refer back to them. All right. So yes, so just to refresh real quick, these are the additional outreach activities that we have planned for 2025. We have many repeats from 2024. We do have an expanded budget for outreach events, and we plan to create some more high-quality outreach materials and new and exciting events for our residents in 2025 to reach new people and share our successes and how people can help out.
Okay. Yep. So the item here is to approve the 2025 education outreach plan. So I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Manager Tofinelli. Second by Manager Morkenberg. Any more discussion on the education outreach plan for 2025? Okay, not hearing or seeing anything. I assume you're ready to vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carried unanimously, 5-0. Okay, then we have another item here that requires a vote, an MS4 petition for reevaluation and administrative GESE. I think you're taking this one.
President Loney and managers. So the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District has a permit from the MPCA to operate a small municipal separate storm sewer system, otherwise known as an MS4. It is staff's understanding that the reason why we are a permittee was for the fact that the district operates the Prior Lake outlet structure and channel. In the map in front of you, the boundary of the MS4, our MS4 area, is not our whole watershed district. It is really just comprised of that area of the watershed district that has a population over 50,000 residents. And it's an area where the permitted organization carries out its stormwater pollution prevention program, otherwise known as the SWIP. The criteria to be an MS4 means that first, it has to be, the stormwater facility has to be under municipal ownership, and watershed district falls under that definition of being municipal. It has to be separate from a sanitary sewer, and it has to convey predominantly stormwater. So the map here on the right, it is really the area that is more of the aerial photography, the green, which actually represents the area of the watershed district that has a population that's defined by the census as an urban area with a population over 50,000 residents. So once again, the idea was for a MS4 is to carry out a SWIP. Next slide. Okay. And just as a reminder, there are 6 minimum control measures that the district must comply with in order to operate the SWIP. So that requires public education and outreach, public participation and involvement, illicit discharge detection and elimination, construction site runoff and control, post-construction stormwater management, and pollution prevention and good housekeeping. So you might be familiar that once a year, we also bring our SWIP forward to receive public comments. We usually do that through a public hearing. And what that is, once again, a requirement from the MPCA for our MS4 permit. Next. Whoops, back up. So this fall, I had a series of conversations with staff from the MPCA, trying to gain a better understanding of just how to apply some of these 6 minimum control measures to specifically the PLOC and how this really worked. And through those discussions, it was the MPCA's belief that the PLOC really doesn't meet those 3 criteria of what constitutes an MS4, for the fact that the PLOC is draining water from a lake, which is kind of deemed to be not polluted water. It's not like you're capturing water from a street and conveying it through a storm sewer. So after my conversations with the MPCA, they came back and provided me with a petition for reevaluation and asked me to resubmit it. And so what that really means is if you submit this petition, they will take a deeper dive and decide whether the watershed district really should be an MS4. Before I just jumped in and submitted it, I did some due diligence, inquiring with other watershed districts, legal counsel, district engineer, trying to figure out, is there a disadvantage to the district if we give up our MS4 status? And really came away with my finding was that having us be a MS4 really did not prohibit us from moving forward with advancing the goals and initiatives in our water resource management plan. We still had all of our rules in place, once again, to protect water quality and flood reduction. And usually our rules are actually a little more assertive than what the MS4 requires. Our MS4 boundary, as you can see, actually is, there are the city of Shakopee and the city of Prior Lake are also MS4s, and their boundaries overlap our boundaries. So in certain respects, it's redundant MS4 districts on top of each other. So not being an MS4 will alleviate some reporting requirements on district staff because you do have to submit an annual report to the MPCA in terms of what have you done to meet those 6 minimum control measures. And once again, with the boundary being redundant with other MS4s, I really don't believe that losing MS4 status would result in any negative implications for the watershed district. So with that, staff is recommending a motion to authorize the district administrator to submit the MS4 petition for reevaluation form to the MPCA.
So moved.
Moved by Manager Boyles. Second by Manager Tofinelli. Any more discussion? I just want to say, since 2006, when I was involved in the PLOC agreement, I always wondered, why is the Prior Lake, Spring Lake Watershed District a MS4? It's for storm sewers, pollution, and I just, somebody told me there was one little connection or something, and I go, all right. So this will take some work off staff's plate, and that's the only criteria.
So since 2006, you've been wondering about this?
Yes, I really have.
You sleep well?
No, I don't. But I just go, why is this? This is government at its best. There's no reason we should have ever been an MS4.
And President Loney, So the MPCA has been changing their annual reporting requirements, and actually they've put it on pause for about the last 3 years. So we haven't submitted an annual report in the last 3 years, and I'm like, okay, this is coming down the pike. And I was like, I really need to understand, because I'm confused on really how to apply this, given what our infrastructure is. And so after they had the conversation with me, they were just like, gave me the form and said,
But didn't you
you
fill
might
out
not be really a MS4.
Yeah, you filled out the form though, didn't you?
I will after this vote, and
Okay.
we'll submit it.
All right. Motion second. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried 5-0. We're going to go next to a termination of watershed development agreement. And I've been wondering about this since, no, just kidding.
2007.
No,
President
I don't
Loney,
know.
man,
Since last month. This is we brought this back. We did discuss this last month for some clarification. So Administrator Casey is going to
so
provide us that.
President Loney and
clarification.
managers, once again, in 2008, the Watershed District entered into a watershed development agreement with Shepherd of the Lake Church for the installation of 2 infiltration areas. In 2017, once again, the parcel was subdivided with the city of Prior Lake taking ownership of Shepherd Path Park and Presbyterian Homes taking ownership of a parcel where one of the infiltration basins was located. The portion of the site has been sold where the YMCA is, and the westerly stormwater basin has been sold to the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux community. And with that development agreement, even though those facilities, so the development agreement on the map in front of you pertain to where you can see the west infiltration area and the east infiltration area. So while the property that was purchased by SMSC do not have the basins, the development agreement pertained to their parcels due to the fact of the subdivision. So they were asking if this could be removed from their parcel, and we really felt like maybe we just need to terminate the whole watershed development agreement. So once again, with that, the language within the development agreement states that the agreement shall terminate on the date that the infiltration areas are dedicated to and accepted by the city of Prior Lake for infiltration purposes. Given that the west infiltration basin now is within a park that is owned by the city of Prior Lake and the city is maintaining it, I believe that clearly meets the definition of dedicated to and accepted by the city of Prior Lake. The east infiltration basin has a development agreement, a drainage and utility easement on it by Scott County. And once again, going back to the definition, a dedication is the conveyance of private land either in fee simple or as an easement for public use. So it is staff's opinion, while it is not the city of Prior Lake, it is Scott County that basin has been dedicated and accepted by Scott County and not the city of Prior Lake. In addition, the city of Prior Lake and Scott County have an agreement where the city has been maintaining that basin for Scott County. And finally, the city did provide us with a letter stating that they have been maintaining it and they commit to continuing to maintain the east infiltration area. So given those situations, all of those overlying support, staff believes that the intent of the development agreement of dedication and acceptance has been met, and staff requests a motion to authorize the district administrator to terminate watershed development agreement, document number A816076.
Anybody want to make that motion?
So moved.
Second. Made by Manager Boyles and seconded by Manager Burnett. Any discussion? Did everybody's get satisfied with the reevaluation or the additional information? Okay, I assume you're ready to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Okay, now we got to go to Minnesota Watershed
I know these guys.
Special Meeting Delegate Appointment.
President Loney and managers. So Minnesota Watersheds is in the process of refining their legislative processes, making some proposed improvements to identify legislative priorities sooner in the year so that they can be better prepared when the legislative session comes into session. In order to move forward with some of the proposed changes, Minnesota Watersheds has scheduled a special meeting to vote on changes to the Minnesota Watershed bylaws and committee structures and timing of legislative activities. The special meeting is scheduled for Friday, March 21st in Waite Park. So the Minnesota Watersheds has asked that Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District appoint 2 delegates from our managers to vote on behalf of the Watershed District at this special meeting. So, excuse me. The motion is to appoint, so staff is requesting a motion to appoint Manager Burnett and Manager Boyles as delegates to vote on behalf of the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District at the Minnesota Watershed Special Meeting scheduled for March 21st, 2025.
So moved.
Motion by Manager Morkenberg. Second. Second by, conflict of interest there, isn't it?
Okay.
Oh, no, just kidding. Second by Manager Burnett. Okay, you guys are okay, as we discussed earlier?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion is to appoint Manager Boyles and Manager Burnett to be our delegates for the March 21, 2025 meeting. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Yeah, that's
I think
right.
you
Aye.
voted, didn't you, Frank?
I didn't.
You
but
did, that's okay.
Aye.
We'll go 4-0. Frank didn't vote on that. Okay, now we're going to move to Fountain Hills Wetland Restoration Feasibility Study.
President Loney and managers. Development rights have been secured on a parcel near the Fountain Hills Road in Prior Lake, with development expected to occur within 1 or 2 years. There are several wetlands located on the site, the largest of which is over 13 acres in size. The historic land uses adjacent to this wetland likely resulted in high nutrient loads in the wetland. The wetland ultimately outlets to Pike Lake, which is listed on the MPCA list of impaired waters due to high nutrient loads. Restoration of this wetland may result in reduced nutrients reaching Pike Lake. Currently, the Watershed District does not have data to support this assumption of high nutrient loads in the wetland. Staff is recommending that a feasibility study be performed in order that we can determine whether there is a cost benefit to the Watershed District of possibly partnering with the developer on the restoration of this wetland. So we want to make sure that any sort of potential partnering on a wetland restoration will provide a benefit to Pike Lake and be a cost appropriate response in terms of trying to minimize pollution loads to Pike Lake. So we would like to put together once again, a feasibility study. And I guess the other thing I'd like to highlight is that The Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux community is also highly interested in improving water quality in Pike Lake. And the staff of SMSC has submitted a request into the tribal council to contribute $10,000 towards the cost of this study. I have also approached staff of the city of Prior Lake, as they also have an interest in improving water quality in Pike Lake as well. I have not heard back whether that is something that the city would be interested in participating in as well. I believe they typically choose not to participate in projects where they are the development or the permitting authority. So with that, though, staff is asking a motion to authorize the district administrator to enter into a contract with a consultant to prepare the Fountain Hills Wetland Restoration Feasibility Study at a cost not to exceed $25,000, with authorization to execute change orders not to exceed 10% of the contract value.
Okay, let's get the motion on the table for discussion. Anybody want to make that?
So moved.
Moved by Manager Boyles, and second by Manager Burnett. Okay, for discussion, do you happen to have a drawing or a map to show the location? I don't know if everybody knows exactly.
Have it here.
You have, okay. I know where it is.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right wetland.
So here's Pike Lake here, and
No, Pike
So
Lake is that, but the wetland.
The location is, it's south of County Road 42 and east of County Road 21.
Frank, you know where it is, right? Berlin property. Okay, I think everybody here knows where it's at. So just want to make that,
Yeah.
make sure everybody knows where it's at. And I believe we do have a lot of interest in the Sioux community on this. And what we're authorizing is for Administrator Kesey to go get a consultant, who's the best consultant to do this job, and just give her the funds. It's kind of a little bit of an urgency. I think you told me, Joni, that this is a development that's moving, and the information needs to be processed as soon as possible. You want to say any more, Joni?
Certainly, President Loney. Yeah, there is urgency in this request because if anything is going to proceed with any sort of a restoration, we need to be at the table and having early conversations with the developer. The developer obviously said they would be interested in considering this, but once again, restoration of the wetland has to make sense from a cost-benefit standpoint for both the developer and for the watershed district. So right now, we really just don't have the data to understand whether this is, I think we all have a pretty good sense that there's probably, high nutrient loads that will be moving into Pike Lake. But, does this make sense from a cost-benefit standpoint is something that we really would like to advance very quickly.
Okay, Manager Tofinelli.
I'm going to recluse myself from this discussion due to some potential, doubtful, but potential conflict of
Okay.
interest.
Okay. I think I understand. You're adjacent to that property. Let's see, anybody else have any questions? Any thoughts? Manager Morgenberg?
yeah, so it looks like we have funds in our budget that could cover the feasibility expenses, feasibility study expenses.
Yes, Manager Morkenberg, thank you for bringing that up. I forgot to mention that. Yes, within our 2025 budget, under the capital project planning budget item, we have funds set aside for feasibility studies that could be applied towards this study.
Okay, and this study would actually, if I read it right here, is going to look at what the nutrient loading is, and would it also kind of identify potential improvements to this area? I mean, that used to be like a cattle feedlot, essentially. I mean,
Correct.
there's cattle all the time in that wetland.
So the study would first try to figure out what is the nutrient load in that wetland, and then it would try to understand how deep. The idea would be probably to scrape out sediment out of that wetland, and then the developer could use it to, in their grading activities elsewhere on the site,
Okay.
mix it with other soils, and then come up with a cost of what would this scraping and movement of soil and then restoration of the vegetation within that wetland, what is the estimated cost of something like that based on, and then comparing that to how much nutrients do we think would be leaving that wetland if nothing happened, so we could come up with what's kind of the load, the cost per pound of phosphorus that a wetland restoration might provide.
So potentially, we could have additional costs of a project. Potentially, I'd just say.
Yes, we'll take this incrementally. Let's first figure out if there is some cost benefit, and then we can decide whether it's a project that we want to pursue.
Yeah. Okay, I just wanted the board to be aware of that. We're just doing a feasibility study now, but depends on the results of that feasibility study. Okay, any more discussion? Discussion? No more discussion, it's going to be ready to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And you abstain. So the vote is 4-0 on,
401,
Huh?
401.
or 401, yeah. With Manager Tofinelli abstaining. Okay. Next one is the one we almost forgot. Thank you, Manager Burnett, for reminding us. Authorization to award contract for the PLOC pipelining. And we got some good news here. Who's going to take this?
Can we all move it?
Do you want to
President Loney,
you want to just skip
managers?
the presentation and just go prove it?
Yeah.
Anybody else want to take it? No. We requests for bids were put out in January. The bids were opened on February 6th. We did receive 4 bids for the lining of the Prior Lake outlet pipe. In situ form technologies was the low bidder with a bid coming in at $701,950.15. This is below the engineer's opinion of probable cost, which was $763,250. The consultant engineer recommends awarding the contract to in situ form, and the contractor is still in the process of trying to reach out to one of their subcontractors to see if they have the ability yet to construct yet this winter season. That's yet to be determined. But the longer we hear before we hear back, the less likely that is. But with that successful bid opening, the motion is to authorize contracting with in situ form technologies not to exceed $701,950.15 for execution by the district administrator, and with any further non-substantive changes on advice of legal counsel, and to authorize the district administrator to enter into change orders or change quantities not to exceed 10% of the contract.
So moved.
Who moved? Ben? Approved by Manager Burnett. Second by Manager Tofinelli. Any discussion? I just want, PLOC, we did meet on February 11th and approved this contract already. So, I mean, the PLOC already approved this, so this is kind of, we're approving our share of it. Isn't that correct? Because the PLOC already.
President Loney, the PLOC cooperators approved moving forward with this, but per our MOA with the cooperators, It is the watershed district who does manage the
Yeah,
contract.
we're the manager, we're the
There-
contractor.
We are the contracting authority, therefore it is required that our Board of Managers
Okay.
also approve moving forward with the award of the contract.
Okay, so motion has been made and seconded. Any more discussion from anybody? Manager Boyles?
For the public's information, who are the cooperators? Maybe you mentioned it and I didn't hear.
The Prior Lake Outlet Channel Cooperators is a consortium of 4 entities comprised of the City of Prior Lake, the City of Shakopee, the Shakopee-Midwakanton Sioux Community, and the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District, who jointly operate and manage the Prior Lake Outlet Channel, which runs from Prior Lake and outlets out into the Minnesota River. It is a 7-mile channel that the cooperators jointly operate and manage.
Thank you.
And it should be mentioned that this bid is under the engineer's estimate. And we also did get a grant from the MPCA with this, just so everybody knows out there in the public. Okay, any
A
other?
variety of other cooperators for that, if you will.
Yeah,
Right?
yep. So we had good cooperation on this whole project. So this is a combination of a lot of work by a lot of people and to bring it to fruition here. So any more discussion? Okay, ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried 5-0.
Thanks, staff.
And maybe we'll get that in this year. That would be even better. Okay, we're now up to the treasurer's report with our treasurer, Manager Morkenberg.
Thank you so much. We are in good standing. As you can see early in the year here, the financial reports only show expenses after they are paid, except at the end of the year. So what you're seeing now is little activity, except for if you look at our claims list for this month here, you can see there's quite a few expenses there, and these are expenses from 2024 that are being paid now. And so as an example, EOR, which is our engineering, there's quite a few charges there. Scott Soil and Water, there's quite a few charges there, but these are examples of very significant help we have had with a lot of projects, and luckily we did a lot of good projects. One thing that you will see coming early is the rent which we pay in advance. Overall, the cash flow has been updated to reflect our 2025 budget, and it does include now the Bowser Clean Water Grant that we received for the Swamp Lake Iron Enhanced Sand Filter. We have adequate funds to cover the next 6 months of operating and committed fund activity. So overall, we are in good position now.
Just one thought, cash flow wise, if the PLOT goes forward, we have to front that whole project.
Yes.
So we have to make sure we have enough cash flow. I think we do. like
Yeah,
you
so
said.
we are planning for that.
Planning for that.
Yeah, so
And then-
that's why it's very important to know when will the project start.
And then Swamp Lake is a different cash flow. There's 3 increments, terms of payment,
Yes.
50%, I think 75 or whatever in the final. So that's a different cash, that's actually better,
Yes.
a better cash flow, so.
Yep, correct.
Okay, very good. Any questions on Christian's report?
Thank you.
Okay, looks good. All right, now we're going to go to the consent agenda. I don't believe there's any changes. Anybody want to remove anything from the consent agenda? Nope, okay. I'll just read the consent agenda. The meeting minutes from January 21, 2025 board workshop, and meeting minutes January 21, 2025 board meeting, meeting minutes December 19, 2024 CAC meeting, corrected meeting minutes from December 17, 2024 board workshop, the claims list and bank purchase card expenditure summary, Scott SWCD 2025 Professional Service Agreement and Cost Share Docket. Bowser Clean Water Fund Competitive Grant Agreement, that's with the Swamp Lake project. Revised schedule of 2025 CAC meetings, Buck Stream Stabilization Project 2025-2026 Maintenance Agreement, and then Jeffers 10th Edition Declaration of Conservation Easement. Anybody want to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Manager Burnett,
Second.
second by Manager Morkenberg. There can be no discussion on this, so I think all in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. And we're at the point where Frank's going to update us on meeting and event schedule.
A lot of people wait
You're
for
on,
this.
you're on, Frank. There you go.
I have 4 meetings to announce this March. Board of Managers Workshop is Tuesday, March 18th, 4 p.m. in the Prior Lake City Hall, right here in this building, in the Parkview Conference Room. The Board of Managers regular meeting, Tuesday, March 18th, again at 6 p.m. in the City Council chambers, which is where we sit right now. The PLOC Cooperators meeting, I see it's noted for Thursday, March 27 at noon. Is that still on, given the current circumstances? Okay, great. PLOC Cooperators meeting Thursday, March 27, noon at Prior Lake City Hall, but in Parkview Conference Room. And then finally, our community CAC meeting is Thursday, March 27, 6 p.m. in the City Hall as well, but this meeting will be downstairs in Wagon Bridge Conference Room. And that's all the meetings we have scheduled for March.
Thank you, Frank. All right. We're at a point to adjourn our meeting. Anybody want to adjourn? Or do you want to stick around?
I've been here since 2006, thinking about.
I've been worried about what you're worrying about.
You know, I'm going to sleep really good tonight. I'm just telling you that right now. Okay, all in favor of adjourn, say, or no, we got to have a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn by Manager Morkenberg.
Second.
Second by Manager Burnett. All in favor of adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried, so we're done. Thank you, everybody. See, I was just thinking, did we ever